Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Headspace Podcast. It is episode 61. It's your boy HSR.
And I'm Prophetry. What's happening?
And you'll notice there's no Christopher. He's not available this weekend, so he's ditching us, and well, that's what it is.
Is this your way to cover up the fact that you murdered him?
Yes.
You cold-hearted bastard.
That's what happens sometimes. But just to let you know, if you don't care about any of my housekeeping section, you can feel free to, in the description, click ahead to when the podcast starts. But before we do that, we need to do our favorite comment of last week. All right, so we didn't really get a lot of comments on the Lil Skies review that we did last week. So we also put out the end of our Eminem Revival review. And DJ Dream Big, who also happens to be starting up in the review game himself, happened to lead the comment. Revival to me is M's best album. Slim Shady LP is still a classic. Castle M structuring was brilliant. Just an awesome song. A Rose, I definitely cry listening to the words of this song. Emotionally rich. I feel you. I'm just going to say it. I feel you. Chloroseptic remix is fucking cleverly designed. We also discussed that. 2 Chainz killed the verse, and I like how M attacked his verse. Old Shady come out to play, letting haters know he's still the best MC in game. This is my favorite LP from M just because of constant storytelling. And I can appreciate where you're coming from. And I like the thought out comment. I like the contribution. Because it's like when y'all leave a comment, you know, with your opinions and your summaries, everybody stands to learn a thing or two. Now, I want to introduce a new thing we're going to mention every episode. I've been doing some work, like I said, and if you check in the description of this video, you will see a link to a Google Doc file, and that is the request list. That is that infamous shit I answer in all the comments when I tell you I'm going to put on the list. It's not finished yet, but we got like 200 or so albums that have been requested on there, so you can take a peek at that, see if there's something there. You can add to that list in the comments. You can see which ones we've done. And yeah, so I'm going to try to keep that up to date as we go on. It'll take time. It's a time-consuming task, but still, just to show you that we care and we pay attention, it's there. And on that note, one more thing to really mention. It's the grind to 1,000 subscribers contest, which is not as pleasant and fun as normal because YouTube is being a little funny with their current policies. So if we can hit that 1,000 before February 2nd, life is super amazing on our end. Otherwise, we have to reapply for partnership, and it just seems like a waste of time, you know, since we're so close at 740 at this point. Basically, how it works is if you comment on the video, you like it, and you subscribe to the channel, you enter into a raffle, and first place is going to get $100 of Amazon gift money. Plus, you can request a review from us with whoever on the team you want. Second place is going to get $50 plus the review. Third place, $25 plus the review. And if we can hit that February 2nd goal of 1,000 subscribers, 2 more people are going to get $25 each and no review. But still, that's more stuff being given out because it's super important to us to achieve that. Just, you know, it just would be cool to make that happen. Anyway, I think that's about it for now. And we should start the show. So, Mr. Prophetry, since Chris is not here, why don't you introduce the album this week?
This week we're doing No Dope on Sundays by CyHi The Prince. This is a rapper who I personally had not heard of until this week. What about you, Holden?
Okay, so I had not heard of him either, except for the part where Joe Budden and Charlemagne the God on their year-end trash video they made, which was pretty fun to watch, actually. I think that, just on a side note, Joe Budden is popularizing long videos, which is just super swell in my opinion, considering the length of our videos. Basically, they both put this album on like their best lyricists kind of display this year. Like, this was like a top album to these guys. And like, we missed it as we were doing Big Crit and shit like that around that time when it dropped. So it came out in November, and I didn't know anything about this guy. From now what I understand, he's with Kanye. He's on Good Music, as I understand it. And this is his first studio album, as I understand it, like his first real project.
Yeah, his debut studio album for sure.
So it just kind of popped up, and I slept on it. as I did and didn't know about it. And then since very little that we recognize came out this week, I thought maybe it would be cool to revisit something that a lot of people certified as a dope motherfucking album and see what it was about. And so that's kind of how we ended up doing this project. I don't really have much more to add there, but I do want to say that I love the title, No Dope on Sundays. Like right away, it just kind of makes you go like, this dude, he has his life.
It definitely is a, from the beginning, just the title itself is very imaginative. And the album cover with the cross really like kind of sets the tone. Especially the way the cross is kind of so roughly like drawn in, and I think it fits with the tone of this album, which is kind of a very rough take on spirituality coming from a tough circumstance.
Right. And at the same time, almost just this honoring the Sabbath in a sense right away. Like do whatever the rest of the week.
Yeah.
But right off the jump, there's a certain degree of respect to God and just the way things should be, you know? Like,
yeah.
And I don't know. It made me think. It made me really curious to hear what was on this project. It was definitely one of the best titled albums I think we've come across so far on the review in terms of just pure intrigue. Pure, like, there's something here I have to hear, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I don't know. You want to get into it?
I don't have... Yeah, let's get into it. I don't have much to say about the cover.
Amen. It's the intro.
Baptized after. I'm the New Testament, the last 5 chapters. And God's...
Let me start this by saying I don't know that I caught everything on this album, and I'm probably a little bit unprepared to talk about the level of depth that gets displayed here. I did my best.
I feel super similarly. This album has, I think, more depth than most, and it you know, I also did my best to try to grab as much as I could, but honestly, there's going to be a lot of stuff we miss. So if you catch anything, let us know in the comments different things that you guys picked up on as well.
Yeah, like right off the jump, the way you got this pastor guy kind of setting this context for this album before the rap starts, it's interesting, right? Like it kind of flows into the song then, and you just it's very much like this sense of where he's from and the environment he's kind of had to deal with a little bit. And then there's that third verse where he breaks down these commandments for how to kind of live your life and how to approach some shit, showing that I don't know, I had to write down a couple of them because they were fucking good. I want to just these commandments. 8, because he's shouting them out. The next commandment I'm about to bring is crucial. Thou shalt never misuse friends. You should make themselves useful. 9, thou shalt seek nobody else approval. Ye who is frugal, being broke, is youthful, huh? And like, I looked it up. He's 32 years old, which is cool because you can tell he's a little bit older now. He's thinking back on his life, and he's kind of trying to take some of the wisdom of his time spent in these streets and his harsh reality he's been from and trying to convey some knowledge towards everybody. And that is just truly admirable. I think if we think of some of the great albums like Illmatic or Black on Both Sides or things like that, those are some of the core components that kind of they had in common, which had them as such esteemed things. And right away, I feel like you're seeing that on top of like whatever else. But then there's just his rhyming is impeccable. He has so many flows, like so many flows. Like he's one of those dudes who understands that every 4-ish bars you should flip it up with something, and he does it not always. But he definitely displays multiple talent. He knows when to keep it going, when to change it. I love lines like, yeah, fist fights with a murderer. I had to let him win, because if I didn't, he'd the type to come back and murder ya. Take you somewhere and bury ya. And like, those are those kinds of lyrics where like you start to just consider, at least from my perspective, this is nothing like I've ever experienced in my life. Like I've never had to worry about that, you know? Like I've barely had to fight, let alone anything else. So hearing a line like that where it's like, you know, you could take him, but you have to humble yourself out to lose, because if you don't, like, he might kill you. Like, that's some real fucking shit, right?
Yeah, that is also the thing that struck me, because this album, you know, right from the get-go, it starts hard, and it's just a little bit of a shocker, because he talks about his life and the challenges he's been through with such realness. And so he takes all of these things that are pretty common in hip-hop, you know, almost like that have become tropes, but like you can tell that this guy has fucking lived that life. But he has this maturity and wisdom to the kinds of things that he has to say that makes it so fascinating. It's like, it is really, like Holden said, hearing something I've never heard before.
I'm like that chorus too. It was so dry, but it had such a call to it in the way it was just like these one-liners that just kind of drove the point home. I was really blown out of the water by this. Like, this might be one of, I know I say this a lot sometimes, but in like a no bullshit sense, this is one of the nicest tracks I came across just as an album opener. When I started and sat down to really review it and got into it, I listened to this song 3 times in a row before I could even move on to it. I just kept having to start it over because it was so fucking good. I mean, this is a 5.5 on 5 as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's a 5 because of how I did my math, but for real, it's really fucking amazing.
I mean, I definitely think this is one of the strongest openers that I've heard on any of the albums that I've reviewed so far. There's this slow piano chords that are playing with this kind of slow bass coming in as it's opening. And then this dope-ass, like, classic almost boom bap style beat comes in. Slow piano melody, these spurts of organ, and this synth even pops up at some point. It's a really nice beat. The drums are nuts. And I fucking love that, like, bass-heavy percussion. It's simple, but in a way that really elevates the music, and it works really well. You know, as far as, like, the content of the lyrics goes, CyHi, like, gave this review that I'll probably be quoting a lot on NPR that I thought was really insightful, and he talked about a lot of songs and where the thoughts or feelings came from. What he said about this track is, I wanted to set the atmosphere for the album. I wanted to take you to a place where this album takes place. I wanted to take you to the environment and get you in the mood. I wanted it to be hard. No disrespect, this is not no Christian rapper. Even though I do rap about God a lot, I'm from toting pistols, smoking weed, and selling dope. I'm just showing you how also to do something creative afterwards, so you don't have to lose your edge or your integrity or connection with your environment, because the goal is still to stay in that environment and bring in individuals out of it. And that's really one of the things that thematically throughout this album stands out to me. It's the sense of, I'm doing this shit out of necessity, out of desperation to get out of this bad spot that I was given as a starting ground. But this is by no means the end goal. This shouldn't be the end goal. And there's this real wisdom and understanding that the bad shit that you have to kind of go through and sometimes be a part of will eventually elevate you to something better. He's got some great lines too. Like, from where the gangsters die young and the rats die faster, so when my shooters spread this Mac live shatter, riding round like who gives a fuck if Black Lives Matter, wash the blood off his hands and then get baptized after, right? It's these are the 4 opening lines to the song, to the album. And they really show that CyHi worships a different religious code from that what you'd expect from a song called Amen. Just like he said, he's not really necessarily this particularly religious rapper. That's not what this album is inherently about, but there is a sense of spirituality that accompanies the dark tone that really suits it so well. Also worth noting, he has this dope fucking flow, and his voice is really distinct. It's got this kind of deep, bass-heavy sound that packs a punch every time it hits. It's a very, very good first impression. I gave this song a 4.7.
I just gotta add one more thing that I think both of us neglected to mention. As much as everything else we said is true, from a lyrical perspective, there is not a wasted line on this album. There's no syllable that is fucking filler. And when you really look at some of these albums, there's a lot of filler.
There's
lines.
A lot of filler. And
this is not the case. Almost the entire album, I'm willing to say this is not the case. And it makes it dense and really fucking interesting. Anyway, I think we should just move right the fuck along and talk about No Dope on Sundays.
Real gangsters don't want to be in the streets. We just stuck out here because we ain't got no choice.
Yeah. Now, if I thought that last song was good, this song took creativity and, like, just shook it up and made it even more interesting, right? Like, so it's kind of like a two-parter. So in part one, it's like almost like a younger him, or him reflecting on his past, and he's describing his understanding of the game, but at the same time imposing this rule, like, and it's kind of like an if you are able, don't do this on Sundays, with this like little understanding that yeah, there are some people who have no choice, but if you're in a good position, just take that day off, and like it'll all be there waiting for you, you know, like. And it was just interesting how he comes at it, and then he like goes in, and it almost sounds cliche in the sense of the way he writes about it, but I realized that it has like this quality that's almost like Wu-Tang authentic, like next level. Like he really seems to understand what he's describing in his different ways. But then this song gets particularly interesting, right? Because most of what I ended up quoting was from the second half, right? And the second half, it's now like kind of in the now, and it's taking on this idea of why are you trapping, right? Like, you know, it's one thing to be trapping, but like, why are you doing it? What is your end goal with it? And that's where it gets like interesting. Like, but enough about my past. This is CyHi. But enough about my past. It's time to save our kids, so our sons will never have to live the way we all did. If you trap to send your daughter off to college. If you trap to get your mother out the projects. If you trap to get your people out the streets. Are you trapping just to be trapping? Are you trapping for these freaks? But if you a real trap, do me a favor and tell my partners in Decatur, no dope on Sundays.
Yeah, holy shit.
I've never heard a line like that in my life.
I mean, it's immediately clear to me why the album is named after this song. This is like one of just the hardest hitting songs emotionally I've heard in a long time. There's this this kind of just like depth of sadness that I got listening to it, that was very much based in how, just imagining what it must be like, because he describes this, there's a certain desperation mixed with hope that's a big part of this song, the whole album. But this song, this sense of like we're wanting to do our best to have this like positive thing for our community, like try to observe this one thing if you can, if you're not too desperate, if things aren't too hard for you. It's like I fucking, that hit me really hard.
But then it wasn't just CyHi, right? So a guy who has made a lot of interesting features this year, and who I do hope drops a project soon at this point, Mr. Pusha T appears. And if you ever look into the story of Clips, I think it is, and you look into what happened to Pusha T and I guess now No Malice, since he's no longer Malice, it's really interesting to, once you like look into their story, to then hear a verse like, started out trapping, trying to get a new bows, then I realized what it did for them hoes. When I recognized what it did to your nose, I couldn't justify what I did to my bro. Fed an addiction, I just let it snow. Failed my religion, I couldn't let it go. Fell in addiction, I just chased the glow. And like, I don't know that I can say that on many times I've heard of drug dealers owning that kind of level of responsibility in their lyrics like that. And considering where a guy like Pusha T comes from, and the lines he used to push, like, wasn't he the Pusha Man? Wasn't that him?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
But like, I no disrespect, I actually happen to really like what those fellows have done in the past. But it's just like, there's this sense of like wisdom, like something I've personally been wanting out of music for a while is, I guess, adults music for adults.
Yeah.
Right? And knowing that this guy's just a couple years older than me and dropping such prolific and interesting shit, it's like, oh, it's almost like something to look up to. Like, people my age aren't all completely useless. Like, some of us are actually trying to be adults. Like, it's cool again, you know? And I don't know, on top of the blessed production and the way it flips up and everything, the multiple flows he drops, the choruses, it really, like, it doesn't feel like a 6-minute and 23-second song.
No, it really doesn't.
And for that, it's another 5. It is, to me, a flawless experience.
The thing is, first of all, just the production, right? You've got this choir singing in the background over an organ. we're in a church seemingly. We feel it. There's some tambourines that are playing as the tracks open, and these claps start up, and then bam, bassy percussion comes in, and the choir now sounds like it's been sampled. The track changes up a little bit, and that goes on for about half the track before, in part 2, the track totally changes up to a piano melody, and then this electronic-y synth with a trappy beat. And I fucking dug this all the way through. It's an unexpected twist, but they make it work. And I think one of the things, and this is like kind of a repeating trend on the album, but one of the things that this album does so well is it really merges production with lyrics, which is to say that a lot of the times you get rappers who it feels like they got a beat and then they work to the beat, and it's fine. They can, if they're good writers, they can write to it and make it work. But here there's this unique relationship where it really feels like the beat was designed to fit the narrative. Like there was special work that was put in so that when there was changes in the tone and the emotion, that the whole track would flow with the change up lyrically. And it suits this album so well at so many points because it feels more dramatic for it. So you got to really commend this track for that. As far as, lyrical content goes, first of all, in that same interview I mentioned before, CyHi The Prynce says, "A lot of my fans know that I grew up in church, so I would religiously have to go. I did other things as far as sports, but my parents tried to keep me busy. They didn't want me to have an idle mind. But once I start growing up, I realized that for me to be really somebody in the world, I had to experience things myself versus hearing it from your parents or your pastor or reading it in a book. So I was always a vibrant kid. I always was that guy. With me getting kicked out of school, the street life kind of came to me fast because you had no choice. This is when I knew I was in the streets. I was used to my parents cooking at night. Growing up, you never think that you've got to have $10 to $20 a day to eat. I'm 15, 16, but I'm living on my own as an adult. It's like, damn, what we eating tonight? Me combining both of my lifestyles as far as the time that I did do in the streets and the time of my spiritual maturing and grooming by my parents kind of gave me a third eye view on a lot of topics in different situations. I can say I can go through some street shit with Jesus in the room. You have to be very, very honest. And I think that's the dope part about me, is how I can exist in both worlds. So that's what No Dope on Sundays means. And it certainly comes across in this track. That entire sentiment. Just like even that hook, right? The No Dope on Sundays. That's only if you're really out here getting money. No dope on Sundays. The trap back booming on Mondays. No dope on Sundays. When you're out here dirty, this the way you do laundry. No dope on Sundays. But any other day, it's rain, sleet, or sunny.
Just like the mailman. No, really, that's like the mailman, the U.S. Postal Service.
Oh, you're right, eh?
Mostly, like whatever. So it's just to say that they have that same, I love that idea. You're dedicated to grind, and if you look at the religious context in the Sabbath,
yeah,
it's very much what you're supposed to do. Grind for 6 days, but make sure to take that day of rest, and that day to do the reflections and to put God first and all that shit. I don't know.
Sorry, I have a lot to say. This is my favorite song on the album.
It's fine. You can keep going.
Possibly one of the top 2 or 3 anyway. This is also a pure 5 for me. But just to say, his delivery here is fucking awesome. There's so much personality in the way that he spits, in addition to his perfect flow, especially in that first part of this song. And then, talking about how taking off on Sundays to cleanse oneself of the guilt or the sinful taint of dealing drugs, it's like this powerful concept. It shows the desperation of a poor drug dealer. He talks about starting at the age of 16 and how it wasn't his dream as a kid. It's heavy shit, and he's really, pulling no punches and being very real about who he is and where he comes from and who he wants to be. I just find the whole track really powerful. So 5.
I agree with everything he said. Yeah, get your money though, cause that's.
Get your money. I'm from the home of the Georgia Peach.
To be clear, virtually every lyric is quotable.
Yeah.
All of them. So it's the ones I quoted in general for this review. It's not that they're better than other ones. It's just for whatever reason they stuck out to me more than other ones did.
Just a note on that to the listeners, because I know you guys might not go through this process, but when preparing, right, we're thinking, we're listening to the song, we're reading over lyrics. So usually it's actually really easy to choose lyrics because there's a few lines here and there that really pop out, and they're the lines that make you laugh or make you feel something. But they're usually a few of the lines in a song with a lot of lines, and this album is very commendable for the fact that there's so much depth. It's a lot easier to go looking for. I mean,
like there are maybe a few songs where I didn't necessarily quote as much, but in general, the quality of writing on this is substantial. Be that as may, I feel like this song can be kind of boiled down into a sentence: get your money and get the fuck out, right? And that's the song. And just at a premise, again, it's another idea or concept I don't find is explored very much. Basically what he's saying is, once you've gotten into the game, done what you had to do, and can get out, do so, because that is the wise thing to do.
Yeah.
And then it's full of interesting lyrics, like Cadillac Coupe de Ville.
Yeah.
Remember, he said, remember 3 rules. First, you're going to need a tool, and if you pull it, shoot to kill. Which is something like, you ever watch those movies where everyone just pulls guns out like everything? It seems kind of ridiculous. From what I understand, you're not supposed to pull the gun out unless that's the situation. So it was good to see him reinforcing that idea. Never shit where you lay. Don't bring that word to the crib. Again, a practical idea in all senses of life. Basically, don't mix your worlds. You know, keep things where they're supposed to be. Click full of killers. That means you got a weak crew. You need some corporate gangsters. Just can't have a bunch of street dudes. And I was just like, yo, that's probably really true, eh? Because like, you really do need some people who can launder, who can handle, let's say, keeping the rest of your operation clean and safe and in the shadows.
Yo, it makes me think of The Wire so much, like Stringer Bell. Have you seen The Wire?
I don't have a bit. I know I should rewatch it, but it was a very long time ago.
Oh man, yeah. Stringer Bell is like the like second in command of this drug operation. And he's like the brains of the entire operation. He's like studying and going to like business and marketing classes to try to figure out, you know, how he's gonna manage his drug business. So it's a
it's a very intelligent way to approach stuff.
Totally.
Another set of lyrics that I found particularly enjoyable was, I done seen it all. I was taught by the mob. When you stop behind the car, give yourself another car length. Can't let them box you in. That's how they did Pac them. Only trust your friends as far as you can toss them. And you ain't a boss if you ain't never took a loss, pimp. When you win the club, leave your pistol in the car rim. My OG's done retired. That's why the police never caught him. So get your money and get out. That's the last gem. And he says a fucking lot there, right? He's saying, like, learn from the mistakes of, like, other people. Down as far as Tupac. Like, look at what he did poorly, and take some wisdom from that situation. And he's like, just in general, my favorite part is his humility. Like, if you ain't a boss if you ain't never take a loss. Like, who says that? This guy, a guy who understands what's up, man. Like, sometimes life just goes the way it is, but if you take risks, you're gonna take losses, and the only way to grow is to take some risks and shit, and just in general business practice. And I don't know, man, I feel like on top of the fact that this dude understands the street hustle, he also seems to understand the proper marketing game of, like, the, you know, the general sense of business and wisdom on how to approach some shit. So
yeah,
this is not your typical get your money song, right? This is definitely one of the first this is a unique new caliber of, like, what I will compare future get your money songs to, for how much this impressed it. And I don't know, I gave this one a 4.5 because the overall instrumentation wasn't as impressive. Like, not impressive, that's not the right word. I didn't enjoy it as much.
Yeah, the
whole package was like a little less good than the previous two. But, like, lyrically, as far as the bars go, as far as the presentation of CyHi goes, still 5 on him. But the overall package is a 4.5.
Yeah, this song, I also somewhat agree with the beat not necessarily being as strong. But that being said, you know, it's got this slow synth melody with kind of these vibes, these choir samples. It's kind of like an old school hip hop style beat. It's got a laid back feel, and I do like it. I just don't think I like it as much as the previous track or some of the tracks that come later. That being said, it does end with this dope beatbox as like an interlude, and then the skip plays in the background. So, and I thought that was really cool. I really felt that. You know, CyHi here has more lines, kind of like, my OG's done retired, that's why the police never caught them, so get your money and get out, that's the lost gem, right? Talking again about this recurring theme on this album of like, do this while you have to, but, you know, don't let this be the end goal. Live for something more beyond this. Escape this if you can. Just the other thing is, like, he said about it, you know, I used to tell my mom I was a prophet, and, you know, they used to look at me all crazy. I'd be like, Mom, I'm trying to tell you, my raps are real biblical. People hear my rap, or hear me rap, and I used to have girls crying. It's crazy because I used to date my high school teacher back in the day. I was the greatest basketball and football player at my school, and I won all the talent shows. But the stigma was I couldn't read well. They would get at me like, all right, Seidel, you're talking in class, stand up and read. And I would read fairly slow, but the teacher that I was dating brought me to a recording studio. A bunch of people were there. This producer named Shakespeare had a few of his artists there. I let everybody rap, and then I just went in. And if you hear me rap in person, it's a lot different than hearing me rap on the mic. I'm just clairvoyant. Anyway, she started crying when she heard me because everybody in the room was like, yo, this is like pop level. This man's got bars. People couldn't believe it. And when I started seeing people getting in their emotions when I rapped, I said, okay, I've got something. And, you know, it's funny because if I hadn't heard this album and I heard this, I'd think like, oh man, this guy really thinks a lot of himself. But the reality is he's pretty spot on. There is this sense of like clairvoyance or prophecy or biblical, you know, relevance to this entire album. It's really like a full part, not just of the album, almost of his character.
I'm gonna give you that entirely. I would agree. It almost, this is gonna sound strange, but the last guy I heard kind of talk that big about themselves was Mr. Kanye West himself, and
who is executive producer on this album, I believe.
But just to like finish that thought quick, I have to say when I first heard Kanye talk, I was like everyone else, big ol' hater. And then the more I got into Kanye, the more I got into Kanye. And I'm feeling like CyHi, to quote Kid Rock here for a second, they say he's cocky, what? It ain't bragging, motherfucker, if you back it up, you know? And I respect that. Like, this isn't him bragging. This is him stating fact, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, Holden quoted some of the lines that I also liked. There's also, at 17, I was on the run with a fugitive. All he gave me was game, and I kept it like a souvenir. I swear I seen them things come whiter than some new veneers. I was supposed to be in school. I think that's like my junior year. I don't know, man. He's just, everything about every line, there's so much... It's so interesting because the stuff that is, he's got some lines that are just like super deep in and of themselves, but he's got other lines that are just really good at like carrying the narrative to where he needs to move it. And that's no small feat. I think that it's dope. Oh yeah, that's the other thing about this track I wanted to mention. So it's dope like as this kind of fast-paced but slow rhyme scheme here. So what I mean is like fast-paced is in the second verse of this song has like this really crazy, what I refer to as like rhyme density, like per all of the syllables that you have, how many of those syllables rhyme with another syllable. And that verse is completely insane. That's the other thing. I just wanted to read some of these. Yeah, Godfathers, top shotters, block rubbers, outside box rotters, God got us, Dodge Chargers, mob daughters, trap houses, fly swatters, dough stoppers, got shoppers, no mobsters who love murder like soccer, light talker, put in work, night walker, might off ya, good shooter, knife proper, dice dropper, street ties, white collar. And he keeps going on with that. It's like, that is a very hard thing to do in your writing and to also carry a narrative, which is why, you know, it gets a little bit more abstract, but at the same time, like, holy fuck, is that like impressive? And he delivers it really well. Yeah, it also reinforces a sense that we got in No Doubt on Sunday, that he comes from this like background where you really have to grind to get money. And yeah, I gave it a 4.3. I liked it, but not as strong as the first two tracks, I don't feel.
All right, well, you could say that it's just moving around. I need 32 for the pound. Boom, baby, moving around. this may be my least favorite song on the album.
Me as well.
So I really appreciate how he hits up that kind of newer, almost auto-tune style really well. And he does his thing, but like at first you're like, wait, is this the same guy? Like, that is my literal thoughts. And it is definitely him. His lyrics are still pretty powerful, but I feel like my interest in this particular song's subject matter is just not as strong. Like, the gist I got is I'm still on my grind. Like, that's kind of, but
yeah.
But whereas the other three had this magical, clairvoyant charm to it, this one just, it didn't carry it as well. There were some good lines, like, shit, I always knew I had potential, blow a bag of Indo like a bad Nintendo.
Yeah, I love that.
If I had your bimbo, it was accidental. And I said, that one is important to me because he's making it clear he's not trying to fuck your girl. And if it happened, it wasn't on purpose. I respect that, right? And then my favorite line of possibly the whole song. Now I'm acting nimble because she acting simple. Back to running circles around that A like an at symbol.
Yeah, that was also one of the lines I quoted. I really liked that whole sequence.
Like when my first playthrough of the album, I was at work. I didn't necessarily hear all the lines, but that one just stood out to me. Like on this, it was like the loudest line I heard the first playthrough was that at symbol line. Anyway, another one that I really dig, and I really appreciate. Kind of like, look, I appreciate the placement of this song. Because if this I'm Always on My Grind song had come on earlier or had it been like the first thing I heard by him, I might have written this off kind of poorly. But given that he's given us, in the sense of this album, 3 tracks to justify his grind almost, right? It really does take this, otherwise, unfortunately, almost feeling a little more on the cliche side of songs, and elevates the need for it a little bit, right? ScHoolboy Q also comes in and whatever. He has this line that I really enjoyed. Taking my chance on a road, told my daughter that I love, but I go. Rather go provide than be there and be broke. Life or death, that paper bringing us home.
I also quoted that.
Sorry.
No, I mean, it's one of the better lines.
It's just because, like, whenever a parent has to face that struggle of, do I stay there with my kid who wants me to stay there, or do I, like, bounce out? It's definitely, like, something that's just universally anyone can go through that moment or understand what that could be like, regardless of even if you're a parent or not. And I don't have a lot more to say about this one. Thematically, it was a little less my thing. The overall sound, a little less my thing. The beat, it's still well produced, but a little less my thing. So I'm giving this one a 4.
That's fair. It's funny, man. We're on a similar page for most of this. I also gave it a 4. The production, there's not like a ton to say about it. It's super kind of airy, ambient piano melody, very quickly accompanied by a trap beat. That's kind of all I noted about it, and it was fine. I didn't have strong feelings about it one way or another. The song itself, I agree with Holden that there's a little bit less stuff here that personally interests me. However, he does. First of all, he just consistently has this unique delivery style, and he does this thing I love where he accents specific syllables in different ways, and it works really well for him and his style, and it makes it interesting, even if he's not necessarily saying a ton, but he's still saying a fair amount here. And not to mention, ScHoolboy Q had some pretty good lines as well. He said at some point, "Keep it top dog when I flee. Started with 1/4 piece, now we're 500,000 a week. Kicked down a door like a Jeep. 'Bout 20 years since I sleeped. I brought belief to the priest. I can sell sand to the beach. Been through the fire. I'ma raise hell to the gods. Oddly, I multiply dimes small with a circle of mines." And it's just like these ideas, like bringing belief to a priest, selling sand to a beach. It's kind of like fun little playful wordplay, but it's got a depth about his character that I also enjoyed. And Holden quoted a lot of the stuff that I also really liked, but that being said, CyHi said about this in that interview, the thing is, I was always rapping because the guys that I was around had so much cachet within the music industry. They were some real street dudes. They used to run with Diddy and BMF Drug King Big Meech and all those guys. So I used to be around them rapping, and I wasn't on no kingpin status. I just used to get a few pounds, do what I did, and then drive back to the studio. My partners were so indulged in it. That's why my music sounds like extra OG status. Moving around is where the OGs sit me down and say, "Okay, here's your dope. Do what you do. Make sure you bring my money back or you've got issues. This is the theme song for getting your baggies, getting your scales, calling your partners. It's giving you that type of energy. And I do think that it hits that tone quite well. It didn't, intrigue me beyond belief. But I still, to say that the worst song on the album is a 4 is a pretty good achievement, I think. So...
What we're saying is this album did not trick me or him.
I don't wanna sell you nothing, pussy nigga, talk is cheap. Can't let you
track that flips up in the middle to create almost this like two-parter of magnificence. I like this one more. I feel like it's still kind of on that kind of flossing, grinding thing. I mean, there might be specific niches I'm missing here, and I'm really sorry if I didn't hit the nail on the head on that one, but the song has this almost more trappy flow to the way they're rapping it, with those high-pitched kind of sounds that are coming out, and Chainz is there, and I don't say that like in a bad way. They sound excellent together, and I feel like CyHi kind of adopted a bit more of that Chainz flow on the track, but did it really well. And it, you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe once upon a time I would have been a hater when I heard this track. Oh, it sounds stupid or whatever, but no. This was really eloquent. There's lots of great lines like, and that skinny bitch you with, I can tell she trying to cut. If I put a baby in her, bet them hips will widen up. Like, what the fuck? Amazing. You lame ass can't get no 3.5 from us. 3.14 because you pie as fuck. Hey, and that's amazing because they literally just made a math bar about shorting your bag. And I can appreciate that because I'm not going to say I've ever participated in the distribution of anything because I've never done that, really. But I know enough people and been around enough people who have to have kind of pictured almost this scenario playing out in my life, which is, I suppose, a rare thing because what's super noteworthy is how weed-oriented his drug dealing is, right? It's not coke. It's not, I mean, I'm not saying that he hasn't had experience in other regards, but he seems pretty adamant on distributing weed volumes of stuff that I've heard of, we'll say, in realms of stuff that's relatable. Yeah. And so I just dig that line a lot. I also kind of like how bossy is. Like, I can easily hit my goon with a payment, let him do the job. This is how I'm used to behaving. They'll probably snitch and say I knew the assailant. They'll trade a cigarette and Mountain Dew for a statement. And I can't do the state pen for none of y'all haters. I ain't in that convo if it don't involve papers. And just like the idea that like he could go ahead and try and get some stuff to happen, but the idea that somebody flips on him and blah blah blahs, and like, you know what, just don't waste his time. He's here for the money. And like in some ways it's like hearing this album is like a best of the greatest parts of the OG code of hip hop ideology. It's like 90s hip hop revamped into this beautiful package of a 2017 release. It's fucking pretty incredible. I'm gonna give this a 4.5 on 5. I fucking really like this song. I don't have a lot more to go on about that.
Yeah, I mean, so the production, it starts with this cool piano sample. It sounds sort of dreamlike over this bassy trap beat. It's nothing fancy, but it sets the mood and makes it feel kind of like a classic rap beats meets a new school beat, which I really liked. That was kind of a cool way to approach like beat making, right? Especially trap's so popular now, but I fucking have I've got such a like heart for that classic style of hip hop. So I really appreciated that. Then, you know, he's got like the first two verses have this kind of fun on the grind feel to them. They don't have a ton of depth. It's really like wordplay, like bars, and it's entertaining and interesting. But then that third verse comes in, where he's kind of like intentionally rapping off beat as if to emphasize his vocals more as the beat changes up, and he fully adopts kind of like a more old school feel. He, you know, like I could read this whole verse and I won't, but just like the way it starts off, I'm 10 toes down, shoes glued to the pavement. Married to the streets, I know the rules of engagement. Moved with the tool and I knew they were hating. Mad, I rose out of the blue like I'm Jalen. I can easily hit my goon with the payment. And we go into like the bars that Holden quoted. And it goes on. This whole verse is like, first of all, the flow is amazing. It's just so effective at moving this like narrative along. And I love the Jedi Darth Vader reference, and like I love that even like in the hardcore street rap, it's like we got some nerd references now. I dig it. The thing is that this track is like very enjoyable, and I think what's super standoutish to me is that CyHi does this thing that's really hard to do, where he'll broach topics that I've seen done to death, and he will approach these topics in a way that is very innovative, where he'll take this existing topic and figure out a new angle to explore. I really felt that with this track. So whereas normally I might not have been so into it, it's just so well done. It evolves so effectively. I gave this a 4.4, and I really liked it.
That's true. But the thing is down on these streets, they call it Murda.
Okay, I'm from East Atlanta.
So this is sourcing the same thing Welcome to Jamrock sources, and I feel like I should have written the name down, but it's a really distinct beat, right? So it's also something I've heard before, which is a bold move for like the beat, right?
Yeah,
like in terms of it gets so iconic almost. And then he comes in and Estelle's there, and I was like American Boy Estelle. And yes, that's the same Estelle. Like it's been a long time since I heard that name, and she comes in and sings this really nice thing. But then he's just got like, I'm from East Atlanta, up the street from the Candler, elbows on the table. They didn't teach us manners. Sell those to my neighbors and we keep them hammers. Play with me to be a... Then it samples it. Murder. Okay. And the song does that a lot.
It does it a lot, and it does it really well.
So it's almost like the whole song is puns built around sampling the beat for the Murda line. And it's just different approaches to Murda that would come in. Another lyric, and this is the last one I'm really going to quote here, is, can't lie, the street shit is mesmerizing. Never realize what you jeopardize until the feds arrive, and we just survive, and kicking doors is what we specialize in. It's just a robbery, boy. Don't make this, and it's like, throughout the track, you get this, like, kind of sense that murder's a reality all like, for them. And it's not something they're afraid of committing to. But on the other hand, he clearly does not want to seek this out. He wants to be in a world without murder. And I believe Estelle in her outro bit almost goes and sings about a world without murder and almost makes it a little more like direct on it.
Yeah.
And all I'm trying to say is this track really is creative. I feel like it doesn't necessarily have the same level of, this song is clearly about murder. It's not really about murder per se, but it kind of is in all the manifestations of how that word could ever play out in reality, from like murdering a vagina to multiple other things,
Yeah. I mean, like, what he said about the track personally is, I've got a few partners in prison for murder. It's a very prevalent thing going on in our community that a lot of people kind of glorify. When it happens in Las Vegas, the whole world's sad. But I feel like y'all should be crying about what's happening in my neighborhood every day if that's the case. I think that's everywhere in America. I just wanted to show that happens in so many different ways, not just murder, but from robbery to domestic abuse and so on. And like that's a powerful, powerful message that he sends very effectively in this song.
I agree.
It's interesting, too, because the beat is kind of this reggae ska track with slow upstrokes on the offbeat and this soft electric guitar. The percussion is kind of vaguely trappy, but with a mostly old school feel. And, there's also this, like, old tape kind of sound. I think they're trying to make the track sound older and classic, like something you might have heard from the 90s or the 80s. And it's definitely like a unique feel on this album, but it's nice. It's done very tastefully, and they make it fit the song very well. Holden quoted some of the lyrics that I like, but just another one. So, that was a slogan. If we heard you holdin', I seen my partner take a bullet. His shirt was soaking. Free my Greg. They gave him life, my heart was broken. He got locked up back when Ja Rule was yelling, Murda.
Oh my word, that one was like interesting too, right? 'Cause you can just picture how far back that is.
Yeah, totally. It really paints a picture. Just this idea of like, you know, this life that he lives being glamorized and that being a problem, you know, understanding and wanting it to be different. It's very powerful, right? It's a very powerful message to show that kind of self-awareness. And I really feel him in his message, you know. This is like consistent throughout this album and goes on beyond this. He does often take these kind of tired cliches or tropes from hip hop, and he just adds some kind of insight or deeper reflections, or finds some angle to explore it at that's really new and refreshing. And anyway, this song I gave a 4.3.
And unlike the name of the next song, you do know why.
Don't nobody know why.
Don't know why. Okay, first of all, production starts off. You've got these kind of bells or chimes or vibes. They add this soft melody, and it continues from the intro into kind of the main beat with this main acoustic guitar melody. And then CyHi's deep voice comes in and gives an interesting contrast to like what's otherwise a very soft, like high-noted music. And then it further evolves later on around the third verse, I think, with kind of this trap beat and heavy bass. And then there's a slow acoustic melody during the fourth verse to change up to this emotional tone that conforms to the lyrics again. It's something that's, like, again, on this album often and really effectively done. And it's something that not many rap artists approach. So it's pretty great to see. There's so much to like about this song, with lines like, 38 snub hugger, jealousy's a motherfucker, swear these would kill their blood brother, all for the love of the money and gangs plus the drug hustle, but let me say this before the judge us.
Oh, I almost quoted that, but I didn't.
And then, let's see if I can finally steal one from Holden. I'm from a place where the good die young, turn boys to men, it's so hard to say your goodbyes. Man, this shit done took lives. If you die, would your hood ride? The only time you got goosebumps was at a book drive. Posing for my mugshot, make sure you get my good side. Oh shit, no, I gotta keep going. Posing for my, you gotta get my good side. I'm just a head case, even took me to Scared Straight. Left the house at 16, I felt I was dead weight, but to the streets I was fresh bait. So I'm riding through the 6 with my SK, hey, trying not to meet my death day. They killed my partner and left him dead by the expressway. Fuck, man.
Oh, man. Yeah, no.
Holy shit.
And it's not even just that, right? Like, this song is very much, like, I feel like the beginning of the song frames it like, yo, people still don't know why shit happens. And so he's going to let you know why, right? And, but even on top of, let's say, the powerful lyrics, it's also just the rhyming again and the flow. Like, yeah, panhandler, hand-to-hand gambler, scam, amateur, 7-gram scrambler, had a Monte Carlo, Tahoe, and Tan Callinger, hit rock bottom. I swear you can't take this shit for granted, bro. And you're just like, oh, like you can see how he's had ups, he's had downs. He truly appreciates where he's at in life. And
yeah, definitely.
And then we broke every Fed law that's in the system. I had a dream walking out the county in burgundy zippers. And right before I was about to hug my sister, ayo, fuck.
Oh, fuck,
and like that's kind of how it ends, right?
I know.
Like you had this guy who became everything he wanted, this like street hero, and just then he just gets taken out right there. But then there's the most notable line for me of all of the lines in here, just because anytime these guys come up, it's worth talking about. But so before them boys cuff us and we lose our life to those bloodsuckers. Rather meet the Migos at the Fuddruckers. Back when I had a plug on Lil Guy, served it while the Kush dry. Bought 2 but took 5. We caught it paying hood tithes. So just the idea that he sold weed to Migos and gave them more than what they bought because that's the right thing to do. Like,
yeah,
there's a certain charm to that line that is pretty good. But I think it's worth noting that the boys from Where the Party At are on this track. And I don't think I've ever heard an R&B singer talk about systematic oppression on a song like that before. Not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying I personally never heard Jagged Edge say those words in the way that they did. I thought it was cool. I was very surprised to see that name appear on this album, and it was nice. Overall, this track is an astounding 5 on 5. It is really powerful, deep, sonically beautiful, and really, like, another one that's over 6 minutes that really just doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, it's just so expertly done. First of all, we also need to acknowledge that there's this great kind of transition thematically from the last track, which was all about murder and the implication to the people who commit the crime, whereas this track, it's kind of talking more about the effects on the neighborhood and the culture, and it's got that heartbreaking ending, and it just shows such skill in narrative development and emotional storytelling, and it couples it so well with production. I also have to give this a 5.
Yeah, but we follow this one up. Honestly, it's a great album, yo. CyHi The Prince, No Dope on Sundays. Track 8, God Bless the Heart.
Bunch of on Memorial driving the Cutlass. I'm bumping young bloods, feel like I'm hitchhiking.
More fun on this song. I really dig a lot of the lines on this. There's a lot more of a God feel to it, a little more like whatnot. But there's also just lines like, feel like I'm hitchhiking. Every flow is a thumbs up. I give you my spirit till all my wrist is uncuffed. It's hard to celebrate Christmas as a black man because like ornaments on trees, that's just how we was hung up.
Yeah, fuck, man.
And it's
holy
like,
shit.
When you hear lines like that as a white person, it really makes you take a step back and think about the situation and just how you've never had that symbolism to even cross your mind one time.
Right. Totally. That hit me really hard. And then immediately after noticing that, something else that struck me is that's the line that hits right before the sax comes in. And it felt like almost like it was like by design, right? Oh, God. Fuck.
Yeah, no, another great one was I came, I saw, I conquered, like Caesar said. No time for leisure. That's what the overachiever says. Sidel, you a Piru. That's what your teacher spread. Pyru, sorry, like the gang. I wrote everything in red because that's what Jesus said. My thesis read. My partner, if you ever saw the Bibles back in the day, all of Jesus' text was in red. It's fucking clever, right? The Pyrus, if I'm not mistaken, red was their color too. I might be wrong. I don't know that much about gangs. My partner fed fish scale to the whole village for a piece of bread. Matthew was 14. That's what the preacher said. Just in a coup, that's what Jesus said. And I'm just like, damn, you know, like when you hear Matthew was 14, like I feel like I don't know if it's really trying to reference the book of Matthew chapter 14, which might be your first thought. It's just the idea that this guy was 14 in terms of the context of something else was just what I thought. I might be wrong. I'd have to go look at what Matthew 14 actually says, but in general, like it was really, again, another powerful, dense experience. I don't like the jazziness as much. It's never been my favorite. So this is a 4.5 for me, not because of lyrics. Lyrics is a game potent, powerful beautifulness. I feel like I could say that about every song and it would be true, but I don't feel it quite as much over the beat. So 4.5.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as the production goes, it's kind of this organ melody with a boom bap style, kind of like old school percussion, and then at some point that jazzy saxophone comes in, and it adds a lot of flavor. I actually did like the jazzy feel. It's funny, the first time I heard this beat, I wasn't super impressed, but it grew on me a little bit over time. So what CyHi said about this track is, God Bless is almost like a rejoiceful song that I wanted to do to show the flip side of the coin. Even though it's rough in our neighborhoods, we still wake up and thank God we're alive and get back to it. You'd be surprised how a lot of people will break down in that situation. But our people have the mental fortitude to keep going and keep searching for those dreams. That's what God Bless is about, being blessed to be alive. And after that, you got to go get it. You know, it's amazing to me that just like I can grab so many quotes from this one interview that he had, and it's so clear that like even outside of songwriting, he is a very thoughtful human being. He doesn't say things without thinking. He's very, very considered in the language that he uses and the ideas that he has kind of been thinking about and trying to develop further. He's got some lines here that stood out to me that I wanted to note, because there's a lot of wordplay in this track that's really good. A Fenny's son on death row, I'ma die behind these bars, because when I put my pen to pad, they should make the pen my pad. Put this shit on wax, how I used to dip and dab. So first, there's 3 lines there. The first one specifically, Athena, son on death row. Athena being Tupac Shakur's mother. Tupac was on Death Row label and died kind of over the words and truths that he spoke, his bars, right? So Afina's son on Death Row, I'ma die behind these bars. That's like some pretty awesome wordplay there. And then he moves it into, because when I put the pen to pad, they should make the pen my pad. So he's, when he writes, he is like telling these stories that he does through putting his pen to the pad of paper, but he's talking about the life that he lives being a life of drugs and crime, and the result is that when the authorities hear this, they should make the pen prison his pad, his home. It's like such like nuanced use of language. It's really great, and it's like just back to back. It's so good. If I hadn't been like sitting there actually reading lyrics, it would have been so easy to miss this for like probably many listen throughs. And I think that's one of the things that stands out about him. There's so much to love and go back to, and I strongly feel that this is an album that, whatever my reviews are for these songs and the album at the end, this is, a review that I give after 2 listens through of the album. I guarantee you that I am going to listen to this album and it's going to grow on me. Like, if anything, that number is going to go up with time. But that being said, despite having clever wordplay, this song didn't quite like hit me as hard as some of them did. I gave it a 4.3.
That's super fair. Let's move on to that side. I like this song. It's basically like a haters go over there, we're over here, and kind of track it and just kind of going into it. But really, it's when Kanye West comes in with or maybe all these haters hating, wait a minute, stand on that side, moved into a neighborhood where I'm the only black guy. People claim they're praying for you, really they be preying on you. All this shit is weighing on you, don't look back, they're gaining on you, yeah, look down on you, yeah, look down, they're aiming on you, all this shit is draining you. Or maybe that's a different line, sorry. And the people claim to know you, put them on you, get famous on you, then they go and blame it on you. You just good, so they can't ignore you. And I'm like, Kanye makes a really good point. They made him famous and then criticized him for being famous and turned on him for exactly doing the right thing. And I was like, all right, Kanye, you got a valid point again, because the more you listen to Kanye, the more he really does make some serious sense as he talks. And then I don't know, like that. I don't feel like CyHi had as many lines on this track that I thought was interesting. It was more like I really enjoyed the general flow of the song, general feel. Like it wasn't necessarily as deep. And as I understand it, in the recording session, it was almost a freestyle of sorts. Like you just felt sense. Like proper, and it came out. He's like, I don't normally do this, but it just happened. And it was good. Couple more things. I really like the lines. I'm so anti. See my buddy pass out. Careful who I stand by. All you do is tell stories. You a campfire. Great line. You can barely hold your water. You a damn liar. And that was a good one. Just again about who you with. But there was one annotation on Genius I had to read because it was from CyHi himself, and it was for the line about how he has 2 girls rubbing clits. Call that a cat fight.
That fucking line.
So his annotation was, and it's just the fact that CyHi felt the need to come and like add this explanation to this particular lyric himself. The part of my album that is, it's like a younger me. It's a week that happened in my life. I used to get a lot of pussy back when I was young. Like I don't even get as much now as I did when I was young. It's so crazy. I'm like this big rap star, and I don't even get it like I used to. And that was something I just wanted to put in there that used to go out of my crib a lot. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I get it. I get it how it's an interesting, he's thinking back on it and all, but it was just such a, like all this super deep, insightful shit, right? And he had to go and validate the part where, no, there really were a lot of times where girls were playing sisters with each other. And I enjoyed that about him. I like the fact that he's that real and shit. This track's a 4.5 on 5 for me. That beat's fire. The overall flow's there, but it is like a vibe that is a little bit off from my interest. It's a fun song.
Yeah, agreed.
And it's a fun song. But after some of those really powerful songs, I see the need for this fun song. But I can't say that this is as good as a No Dope on Sunday. So it's definitely a 4.5 on 5.
I mean, what Holden's saying is like something I agree with full-heartedly. It's kind of this interesting dilemma where those hard tracks hit so hard emotionally that you kind of need a break from them. So this song is a necessity. That being said, next to those tracks, it's really hard to compare because this feels like it's a little bit of a break. It's like, okay, guys, that was heavy. Let's have some fun. Let's not worry too much. And the track is really effective at that. First of all, that beat. Like it comes in it's to understand my writing process when I'm going through these reviews. I'm always like writing as I'm listening, and so like the beat comes on, and immediately before like anyone even says anything, I'm like, I love this fucking intro melody is what I wrote down. It's like I was trying to figure out what it was because it was like a really distinct sound, and I think it's this sampled piano where I think they then removed a large range of frequencies on that recording, and it gives it this almost like underwater sound effect kind of feel. Like it sounds like it's like maybe a piano being played underwater. It's eerie and really cool, and then it's over this bassy trap beat in the background. It's pretty great. As far as like lyrics, there's just some fun stuff. Like I quoted the "got two bitches bumping clits, that's a cat fight. I'm riding with the stick, and that's that act right. I'm here with all my jewels like I'm a rabbi." Like that was so the other line that he had that I thought was kind of like cute was, "Might get you whacked, you standing 3 close." And at first I was like, wait, what? And then I realized it's not 2 close. It's even more close. It's 3 close. Like, it's fun. And same thing with Kanye. Kanye has some pretty fun lines too, where he's like, "Yeezy's in the field, Yeezy's in the field now. Made it to the NBA, we in the NFL." And it's like, yeah, he's a rap star who's like moved into fashion and sportswear,
and his shoes are so good that they have been picked up everywhere.
Right. Have you worn Yeezys or seen them in person?
Not in real life, but I know that there are people who do.
Yeah, I mean, they're popular. They're super popular.
Here's the thing about sneakers in Montreal. There's like 6 months of the year where you can't wear your sneakers if you do get nice ones. So I never really became a sneakerhead in a city where you're gonna wear boots and everything's ugly.
Yeah, I'm curious. What do you guys think of Yeezys or footwear in general? Is it something you guys are really into? And if so, like what's your experience been with Yeezys? Because it's something that I've totally not dealt with. And Kanye, I had to slide this in because Kanye, is kind of like doing this almost in a sense as a marketing strategy. He plugs it in everything now, and like on the one hand it occasionally gets old, but then it doesn't really, because he's always so fun in the way that he plugs it that it's almost never an issue, and it's a clever marketing move on his part, which he's like a very, very well thought out business person. But anyway, yeah, and you quoted like all the Kanye stuff, which was also really good. Look, this was a fun flossing track with a little bit of depth added by some of Kanye's lyrics. I didn't love it, but I did enjoy it, and I do think it fits here. I gave it a 4.2.
Awesome. Let's discuss Looking for Love.
Looking for love, looking for love, looking for love.
This is the love song. This is the one where, I mean, if I remember from that interview that he did, what he was saying was he was picturing this moment where he was at the club and he was just kind of there for innocent reasons, like checking out new music or whatever. And then he meets a girl who was there because her girl wanted to go or whatever. And so this is him pitching the girl who also doesn't want to be at the club, being like, yo, why are we here? We're not going to find what we're looking for here. And instead, he just kind of lays out what he's looking for in this song. Now, a lot of this is very, I don't want to call it standard love song stuff, but it's standard romance, right? Because he's really in it, like a very powerful, honest relationship of what he's going for. Like, he's money, he's got this stuff, he wants to provide for her. But, like, unlike your normal, like, yo, I got money, you got this, fuck me. It's so, well, you want a man who provides? I can provide. Let me take care of you. Like, so monogamistic, so much stuff. But then there's parts like this, right? Like, yo, hi, you want a man who can provide? Look in your eyes, tell you no lies. cook on the side in the hood with his guys, then go to the church, pay his offerings and tithes, still hit the club, throw some ones in the sky. If that's what you want, come and jump on this ride. My first thought is, this is starting to read a little bit like a Plenty of Fish profile. Like, well, this is me, I do this, I go like that, I go to church, and you know, and it's got this honesty to it where it really is what he is. He's putting himself out there, and then he's what he's looking for. And then I dig the part where, like, in the second verse, it almost implies like he's picturing like a more serious relationship, where he's got lines like, she just wants somebody that's street but still got class, still got cash. Most of her friends said it will not last. Trying to go legit but still got bads who love you and your Jill Scott swag. And then kind of commenting how he likes it thick, even kind of like calling her fat. And like she didn't really like those lines. And I'm just like, this sounds so organic and fresh. And then that outro part where he wants like the wife and the kids and all of that shit, and it sounds so dreamy, like he's just kind of really lost in this little fantasy. And I feel like in the way you said it before, he's able to take super cliche topics and approach them in this fresh perspective that makes you almost excited to hear his take on a done to death issue. Like, when you can write a fresh love song like this, it's refreshing.
And I've got to agree with you and just like pop in to say that, you know, anyone who watches regularly will know that I have a tendency to like be pretty harsh on love songs. Most get kind of pulled out in my filter, and I don't dig. I really dug this song. You know, it's.
I'll just say I give it a 4.5, and that's it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, man. It's just like, it's a funny thing where first of all, let's just even start with the production, right? You've got this kind of pitch shifted, like back and forth music intro it's like a sampled bit of music that's pitch shifted back and forth. And I was so sure hearing it for the first time it was going to be like the intro to this track. No, this is the fucking melody of the track. And right there, like, that is very unique and interesting, and I can't remember hearing that before. And then they have this bassy trap beat start up, and it's just like a really interesting approach just musically. And then we get into the lyrics, and you know, everything he talks about, he does with this like silky flow while making it interesting and listing all these things. What are you looking for? Someone that's yours. Open the doors. Help with the chores. Money galore. Entrepreneur. Pull up the Porsche. Spend the guap at the stores. Bring you flowers and more, girl. I know what you're looking for. You want a man who can provide. Look you in the eyes. Tell you no lies. Cook on the side in the hood with his guys. Then go to church. Pay his offering and tithes. Yeah, like, man, it's like really well done. It moves the narrative forward while having these interesting ideas consistently represented in bar after bar after bar. He's just really, really on. And not to mention, this is like the third or fourth time I can think of off the top of my head that he's mentioned tithes in this. But one thing he does so well in this album is he really, really nails the way to approach a concept-oriented album, which is to say, he manages to find new things to continue to talk about and to move things forward, but he always relays it back to the theme without saying the same thing over and over again. And that is the unique challenge.
If I can even add just a little bit to that, if you think previously on the album, one of the things he was saying was how you want to like, if you're gonna trap for more, like, have something more.
Yeah.
And now he's a little bit trying to show you what his more is. So he showed you how he got his wealth, and now that he's got his wealth, he's like, well, I want this love. And then in some of the other tracks we're gonna see on the album, like at least the next one, at least a little bit more of what he's gonna do with that situation or his vision for things. And I think that it really enhances the overall narrative of the album by showing that there are more than money to talk about, more than, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm sorry, I worry that you may have already quoted this, but just in case you hadn't, I have to. Stay on his grind, but still give you the time. You run through his mind, huh? But you something that shines. Bar number 9, run with the iron. One kind of girl, you want Jesus and Obama combined, girl. He's just.
I did not quote that. So.
Okay, that's good. He's just funny Is this the one? This is not the one that has an Oprah reference. No, that's later on.
No,
but
that's the next one, I think.
It's just this is a fun and silly reimagining of a romance track that's really put together and, you know, feels super authentic. And that's the thing, right? I'm not anti-romantic. Like, I like romance. My problem with romance tracks is they often come across as cheesy, forced, or inauthentic. And one thing that I absolutely love about CyHi The Prynce is he is anything but inauthentic. He is so authentic. I gave this a 4.3.
Fair. Let's talk about New Africa.
Motherland, tell them we coming back for her America. Know if we leave it be a massacre.
So when I heard the subject matter of this song, I was like, how the fuck am I supposed to talk about this as a white person? So I'm just gonna talk about it as much as I can and hope that I don't blunder. The song has 2 verses, and I believe it approaches 2 verses, a cool African instrumental jungle beat interlude, and then a spoken outro by Ernestine Johnson. Verse 1 is kind of him imagining, like, you know what, fuck it. What if a lot of black people go to Africa and invest there? Just all of us, just leave and go. And it's got lines like, imagine if all the rappers, this is how it starts. Imagine if all the rappers were to get with all the athletes or activists and actors for a conference in Zaire to meet with all the ambassadors in the motherland to tell them what we're coming back for her. And then later on it kind of flows, and then, so we can build a neighborhood up in Zambia. Tell Kalah to build another one. Get it? Another one. In Tanzania. What if Jay and Bay went and bought some land in Egypt and Puffy put a strip of clubs on the sands of Kenya? New Africa. Since America can't stand to see us, let's show them why you never bite the hand that feeds you.
Fuck,
and it was
man.
like, it goes on. Then the second verse, it's very much a dedication to African women and his appreciation of them, and like his desire to be with women of the different parts, multiple African ladies, as he's puts it out, but makes it very clear across the continent, you know, and he shouts out so many different places with it. Then there's that like African beat little parts, and then it flows into that outro where it's the same like kind of general feel, like picturing a life in Africa, but with this like spoken word powerful like I mean, I can't necessarily empathize exactly with what the tone of it is, but as a white dude hearing this, it really makes me appreciate that there is this other whole culture and like the whole idea of how I guess white people treat black folk in America is a little bit fucked, a lot fucked. And I don't know, like what if that did happen? Like, I think one of the lines is saying like it'd be a really interesting idea, is like a direct thing he says. And honestly, it's like I love the idea of what Akon did in Africa, and I would love to see more and more people head over and redevelop it. I mean, I don't feel qualified to really speak on it, like my homeland or anything like that. This is not, obviously, but I feel like the sentiment of this song is really interesting, and it is still something that I can appreciate enough to give this track a fucking 5. I thought it was a flawless experience of really powerful emotion conveyed, and I guess that's about it.
I think this is like one of the competitors for my favorite song on this album. I also gave it a 5. The thing is that this song is so many things at once and so effective in its approach of these things. First, I just wanted to give a quote of what CyHi said about this song. He said, "I grew up not only Christian, but my parents are very pro-black. My dad used to be like, man, I remember we used to get the BMW and take the fender off and make it a lowrider, put the different wheels on it. 5 years later, it was coming off the lot like that because they saw what we were doing in the neighborhood. He used to tell me that, why don't we build cars in Africa and ship them to America? I guess this conversation will never change. New Africa is a timeless song because it'll always be something in society that brings us back to that idea. We need to get together. I wanted to find a creative way to get youth to start thinking like that. I just want a 10-year-old to hear that song and say, Mom, it sounds kind of lit over there. I wanted it to sound like a black Disneyland. I just see that vision. You've got to start thinking like that. And I think that's something that will always be prevalent in our community." Man, he goes on and like, you know, Holden's already quoted a ton of the great lines from this. There's this idea that all of these huge contributors to American culture, what would happen if they left? What would happen if they weren't a part of this culture that is bigoted towards them, that does not treat them fairness, and instead is actually quite unequal in the way that they are treated and the wealth distribution that they make up? I think it's a very powerful statement. There's so many things that strike me about this track. The production is amazing. It's got this dope ass beat. It's kind of like boom bap style mixed with some like heavy distorted bass. I couldn't quite identify what the melody instrument is at the beginning of the song, like if it's some flute-like instrument maybe. I wasn't 100% sure, but then halfway in, this jazzy bit comes in shortly, and then at the interlude in the end, it's accompanied by trumpets and the sound of like wildlife talking like you might expect in the jungle. It's super well put together. Like, just sonically, the beat by itself is phenomenal and is one of my favorite things on this album. But then to have so many lyrics that are just like jumping between, first of all, every line is super rich. And there's this like interesting balance that he does where there's like a lot of lines that are sort of funny here, but are also pretty heavy at the same time. It's a tone that's like not super easy to pull off. He just does it so flawlessly. I gave this a 5. I really loved this track, and this is the point in this album where I kind of realized that we're really dealing with an artist of incredible potential here. One of the things that I have to say is that like this album by this point already started to remind me of really great albums like and artists like Dead Prez, for example. Like I heard this track and I immediately thought of Dead Prez. I also like Nas, and I think there's an Illmatic quote at some point in this album as well. It's clear that he really knows. I think he knows who his influences are, and he does such a good job of taking from them, but then developing something new and original. I'm so impressed. I gave it a 5.
Awesome. I guess we're all free of this now.
Crystal like Urkel had on Laura. I told her God is my attorney. I never go to court without my lawyer.
This beat is intoxicating. Like, it might be one of the most well-composed beats on the album. Like, there's that little, like, musical interlude bridge again on this track. It's 2 in a row at the same kind of location of the bridge, actually.
Yeah.
That was amazing. It was, sometimes I get kind of antsy in those parts where I'm just waiting for it to kick in, but no. The beat just sucks you in, and I really appreciate his ability to know when and how to let a beat breathe, because this one, he changes his pacing a bit on the rhymes to really accentuate the effect. It kind of like explores freedom, right? And but it's got like a lot of, I know it was really stupid like summary, but it's got lines like, failed every class, I flunked out before the 11th grade, they told me I had a disorder, but every song Hebrew sound like a poem out the Torah, and he's just kind of like showing how like he's trapped in his school box, gets kind of out a little bit, and goes in and realizes through the rhymes that he's getting this almost prophetic poetry like you described earlier. I like the line, had a crush on Krista like Urkel had on Laura. I told her, God is my attorney. I never would go to court without my lawyer. Huh. And it's just like God's always with him, etc. And he's just kind of like discussing in the general what is free, the idea of free in a macro sense, in different elements, in a literal way, or just like from like freedom and like personality to like a financial thing. Like one of my favorite lines that really struck out to me, if love don't cost a thing, try saying that to girl you bought a ring. And it really explores like the financial implications of dating and things like that, and how like as much as we all have these nice nuanced things, like almost nothing is free, but what he really wants is some freedom. And then at the end in that outro, he's just free like this and etc. And I again found this song to be a truly amazing experience where I'm left with another 5 on it. Almost every line of this song is powerful and deep and gives the same kind of thought-provoking reaction as like most of the rest of this album.
Would you give it
A 5. I thought this was fucking
That's fair.
amazing.
Of this song, CyHi The Prince said, "It's me talking about all these label executives metaphorically. My frustration with my label Def Jam was, you don't really know what I've been through to get here. You don't know the story. You just don't know. You don't know just by releasing me from this label what I got to go back to do to start over." This album delays have been frustrating, or the album delays have been frustrating, but it's also been, how can I say, it's been like being on the bench for the Golden State Warriors. You're winning the championship every year. It's just the fact that you don't get that much playing time. But think about it. I'm the reason why these artists are really that good, because they get to practice against me. Kanye, 2 Chainz, from Big Sean to Travis Scott, Pusha T, they all get to practice against me. I didn't make them, but I keep them sharp. Man sharpens man like steel sharpens steel. On a humbler level, I think once I get to that moment where I get to reap the benefits, I'll be a lot more content with what I have, and I won't go too crazy or change who I am. Man, like, he sounds like such an interesting guy. I really would love to, like, talk to CyHi The Prince. I just, like, feel like he's the most interesting person ever. Everything he says is so interesting. Like this, just the, like, it sounds so egotistical, but honestly it's not. Like, he's speaking truth. This whole album is, I bet, a challenge for every artist who had to come on. And that says a lot for someone who's talking about his debut album. And then he switches it up at the end of that and is like, on a humbler level, I don't know. He's a cool dude. This song has this very smooth transition from the last song, kind of ambient, jazzy start with vocals as the percussion, and the beat only comes in to, like, this auto-tune singing about halfway into the track. You know, it's got some pretty heavy words to a great melody, and there's also a number of lines that pack an emotional punch, and I liked it a lot. Just some of the lines that stood out to me. Yeah, feel like I'm being enslaved, married to a bitch, it's hard being engaged. You spent your all on your gift, but you work minimum wage, and she turned right back around and spit in your face. She tell you you ain't good enough, she tell you ain't hood enough. She talked about who she should have fucked with, and now you're tired of putting up with her shit, so you decide to leave. I mean, like, you know, as a metaphor to him talking about his label, it's interesting. It's also, it just feels so heavy, and he does a good job on it. I gave this a 4.7.
Fair. All right, let's talk about a truly interesting song, 80s Baby. I don't know, when I saw 80s Baby, I figured, okay, he's gonna talk like something like Section 80 Kendrick or whatever. No, I wasn't expecting this. So this song is told from the perspective of a fetus inside of the womb, speaking to the mother as the pregnancy goes on through, describing a toxic environment for this baby to grow up in. And it's got, like, lines like, "Hey mom, this is your son buried off in your stomach. I feel the effects of them drinks every time that you vomit. Smoking cigarettes, you said you would stop. You told me, you promised. I heard you arguing with the man. I could tell he didn't want it." And he kind of, like, goes through, and the whole song kind of paints different versions of this thing. Another one is like, "All the bruises on your arms, it's starting to damage your skin. Mommy, you sure you want to start a family with him? Like, this guy beats her or whatever. There's drugs involved. She hides her pregnancy, like he's not even aware of it." And, like, the kid's basically being like, "Yo, it's 40 weeks and nobody's even knows you're pregnant or anything." Like, and it's just like, BJ the Chicago kid comes through and is just kind of just sings on it. And this guy just, I don't know him that well, but everything he seems to be featured on is really fucking good. So I'm a lot more curious about him than I've ever been. In general, I've never heard a song quite like this, and that interesting factor of the number of times I've said that on this review is insane. But I'm left with another 5 on this. It's powerful, it's provocative, it makes you feel, it's documenting some interesting shit, and as I'm certain you're going to quote his interview thing, if I'm not mistaken, it's pretty factual based on him imagining himself as a fetus.
Yeah, I mean, what he said is, I came up with this concept because my mom didn't know she had me in her stomach till she was about 6 months pregnant. She told me she was drinking and smoking, whatever she was doing, then she found out. Me and my sister are 11 months apart, so she had just had a baby. So she had to start eating right and taking her nutrients. That was on a blessed level, but I took it to a more grassroots ghetto level where a lot of women are just going through hardship while their baby is in their stomach. A lot of men are taking them through changes. They're going through emotional changes. It's just a baby talking to the mom from her stomach. Every time I kick, she say, I feel his little feet. When I listen to my heart, I can barely hear the beat. It's an emotionally heavy track. And I mean, this album just continues to evolve so interestingly, both musically and lyrically. As far as the productions, this track has this kind of electric organ melody, this kind of interesting percussion. It was almost like 3 bass hits and a snare. It was very bass heavy. And then the bass comes in at the verse along with trumpet bursts, and there's piano bursts that also slide in at some point in the song. It's just like Holden quoted out, it's a very interesting concept that is very well done. This whole album is a very well done project. It makes me sad to say that I feel like I can't do this album full justice because it's just that good, and it's the kind of album that I think is going to have real lasting power.
It's totally the kind of album worth revisiting in a couple of years.
Yeah, 100%. As for this track, I gave it a 4.8, and I just thought it was fantastic.
All right, we are getting closer to the end. Another interesting song, but I'm not gonna lie. This part of the album, I was feeling extremely full at this point. It's dense, like rich cake.
Yeah.
This one has a like this sense of getting closer. Like it's interesting how it'll take like the song title and almost right around that, like closer to God, closer to success, kind of reflecting on the then, the past, and where like the future's going. I grew up stealing money on my mama purse. Now I'm buying everything I promised her. She don't want nothing else on the earth but to see the sun in church. But just the night before, we was robbing and running work. I'm just like, yeah. Whoa, that is some deep ass shit right there, right? Like, and then, like as he's thinking about the past, the belt don't hurt no more. She can tell when she look at my face. I was a castaway. I had to learn how to navigate through the alleyways, then pull you on the Caliway, huh? I did some shit I can't elaborate. Tried to serve some I ain't know, and that was my last mistake. And saying, I know I'm one of your favorite soldiers, but I can't help you no more. Cause me and Christ is getting closer, and it kind of like fades into the beat. And it's just this idea of getting closer to God as you're going through it all, which again ties back to the main theme of the album. And after hearing his whole story and seeing some of the the transitions and experiences he's displayed to get to this culminating point where he just finds himself being drawn closer to God as all of this darkness is happening around him, and in spite of his history, to look for this salvation and everything. That's like the end result of this story is that he's saying no to Satan and choosing God and choosing the nobility, and he's choosing another way.
Yeah.
And like that's the kind of stuff that honestly I feel like Chill's just describing it. But as a track, I'm giving it a 4.5 on 5. It is still pretty fucking stellar, but the beat's a little less my thing. I don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. So the beat is this kind of like sampled singing with maybe boom bap styled old school beat. It's got this electric organ melody. I think it's intentionally church inspired. I think the last track also had some organ or one before, and I think that's potentially intentional. Like I think part of the brilliance of this album is it does often feel like the music is really designed to go with the words, and you almost get this sense that maybe it's intentional that as the album goes on, he's increasingly closer to God. Like actually, if you look at it in the first half of the album, that's where the most of the topics are about, the street life that he worked to try to get out of, that he did not, want to continue living. And as this album nears its end, we see that he's no longer talking that much about the street life. It's talking about different issues. The music is getting more spiritual, and has a song here where he's actually talking about, how the hard times helped him get closer to God. I'd be really curious to know how intentional it was. I honestly would love to just know his design process for the album, because I feel like he put so much thought into the whole thing. What he said about it is, after you go through all the trials and tribulations of this album, or in life, it kind of brings you closer to God. Some of my partners were all tough growing up, but as soon as one of them got a gunshot wound, the first somebody they'd call is God. Before my partner got shot, he never went to church with me. But then I took him to church 3 days after he got shot, and he says to this day it's one of the best things that happened to him, because he understood he had a purpose. He had a couple of kids coming, and he was like, my life could have been gone like that. You never think at age 15 that you'll get shot. So that's a song about just becoming yourself, becoming a man, and having a certain spiritual side about you that you should have throughout your life to make you a better person. And it's like, yeah, I really think that comes across. Also worth noticing, this is the album where he has a reference to Nas. He says, can't doze off, the cousin of sleep is sure to get you. Bemoan a pistol when I draw, you know it's a stipple. It's stipple. So the first line is the one in particular, can't doze off, the cousin of sleep is sure to get you. It's a reference to... Yeah, exactly. The line from Nas's album Illmatic, specifically I think the song A New York State of Mind, where he says, I never sleep because sleep is the cousin of death. But then CyHi goes on to say, bemoan a pistol when I draw, you know it's a stipple. Stipple is like the various dots used in drawing. So he's talking about shooting so many holes in someone that it makes a drawing, which is like pretty intense imagery. Just all that to kind of say that, it's great. We're coming towards the close of this album. I think he's wrapping it up well. I gave this a 4.5 as well.
And after one more song, y'all are gonna be like, I'm free of these dudes.
Wait, that was the last one. This one's I'm Fine.
I'm Fine.
This one starts off with this bassy synth, which accompanies a trap beat. And then we get Travis Scott's auto-tuned vocals adding some flavor to the track, and it gives it kind of this positive energy that really fits the tone. Almost like, thank God I'm fine. After all of that pain, I'm fine. It really feels like a good transition from the last track. And, towards the end of this track, it slows down to this pastor's sermon to end the album over this hopeful piano melody. It's really quite nice. Of this song, CyHi The Prynce said, that's my The Doors of the Church Are Open song. After you find salvation or you accept that you're growing, people may look at you different. People may look at you like men. You want to go to the club with us? Nah, I'm fine, bruh. I'm good. And I think that song gives the individuality of the album. That's what I want to gift them off that song. Your hardship may be different. At the end of the day, it's okay. You live your life, and whatever makes you happy is fine. That's just what I'm finding. No Dope on Sundays is just a book of my Bible that I'm writing. Honestly, this is a nice ending to a great album. It's got this super positive energy, and it ends on an inspirational note, which I really feel this album was leading up to. I feel like this is the moment of triumph, and it's just a fantastic debut album. This song punctuates it nicely. I gave this a 4.5.
Honestly, I couldn't focus on the lyrics. I had them in front of my face and all that shit. I heard Travis Scott talking about how you don't have to ask me shit, I'm fine, that's cool. But then here's the thing. When you finally get to this track, I mean, you've basically carried a cross along with CyHi to go a little biblical on you. And then you get to the point where the sins, the burden on his shoulders is gone. And this is the first song where you get this true sense of happiness. It's the first time we're seeing joy, explosions of positive energy. And to go through this like negative, heavy experience, to just explode with this almost, I guess, joyful experience is a good way to put it. I was just left almost emotionally vibing. I felt the freedom. I felt it. Like, it was just happier. It was just this like almost verbal diarrhea experience of like he'd been holding off for so long. and like as you said, to culminate to this exact point, I know that I don't have a lot to say on this song, but it really is because at this point in the album, I feel like I'm defeated almost emotionally. This is like, okay, anyway, I gave this song a 4.5 on 5, but if we want to move in just a little bit to the album, I regret not having heard this before making my top of the year list that I did,
sure.
because there's just no way this wouldn't have. I can tell you right now, this would have been the 3rd best rap album I heard all of last year. Like, it would have ranked pretty fucking high on my list. I don't have the final thing, but it would have made very close to my top 5 albums of the year, if not in my top 5, because this is truly like, this is what I was hoping for from Kendrick Lamar's Damn, if you want the truth, was something of this caliber, and I would say I enjoyed it a lot. From a metric perspective, it's one of the highest grades I've given, with a 4.66. Like, it's fucking incredible. This album has like no misses, no flaws, really. Like, I mean, there's stylistic choices that are not my favorite, but I haven't heard an album really in a very long time where it's 15 tracks, 15 unique experiences, 15 developed songs that there was no repetition, there was no redundancy. I mean, this is one hell of a fucking album, and if you have not heard this yet, I highly recommend you stop whatever else you were listening to, maybe finish our review, and then after that's done, proceed to go listen to it. If you have heard it, man, we should both go put it on when I'm done talking.
I mean, I gave this album a 4.6, which is one of the higher marks that I've given an album, maybe the highest. The thing is that this album has so much depth to it in every direction, and it really does have, I think Holden just said, like, this album has no misses. It's funny, I wrote those exact words down at some point and I just didn't read them out, but like, it doesn't. The closest thing to a miss this album has is a 4 on 5 for me, right? Which is pretty incredible if you think about it, because for a lot of artists, they kind of struggle to even maintain hitting 4s. I can't believe how good it is. I think that it really, like, he jumps into the scene on this debut album for me as like one of the biggest people to watch. I think that,
is it not incredible that he did this at 32?
I mean, that's amazing. I didn't know he was 32.
Yeah, like, he's not even young. He's 32 years old.
Yo, I mean, but that's the thing, right? He's inspiring in so many ways, and to be clear, the fact that adds so much to my understanding of this album, because like, he does come across as mature, wise. Like, he's seen some shit and he's grown from it. Fuck. I honestly could just go on a tirade and talk about this forever. But just to finish it off, the album has a theme that it sticks to flawlessly, moving forward this discussion about spirituality and trying to almost be saved through spirituality, and elevating certain moral tenets above everything else, to the point that he has, even commandments early on, religious references throughout. The album really carries you through this evolution of his life that shows how thoughtful he has become, and I just think it's an excellent album. And then musically, it also is very good pretty consistently. The other thing that's super impressive that I have to say is that 15 songs in, 72 some minutes in, this album did not feel old. I was still really into it. And if anything, I can understand Holden saying, it left him drained. This album, I mean, it's powerful. It's really amazing. And I really do see a lot of influence from the greats in CyHi The Prynce. I really do think that he's got crazy potential ahead of him. Anyway, so I gave this a 4.6.
Fair. I think this album proves that the new music isn't necessarily as bad as people think, because this qualifies as new music. And we could also say it's good music. Get it? Kanye. Anyway.
What?
Good music.
Oh, that's a new, okay.
All right, thank you all for watching. Y'all make the show, really. It isn't us. We're just two guys on a couch. You guys comment and give your opinions and your thoughts, and it's always fucking riveting to read through. So let us know what you think, because then it's more of a community, and especially if you're correcting us, because then other people see it and they can learn too, or they can be like, yeah, at least somebody fucking said it.
And what do you guys think? Like, what stood out to you on this album? What were your favorite parts or favorite songs? Was there anything that you feel that we missed that was really important? Please comment below. Please let us know. We would like to be a part of that discussion.
And if you do that, it does enter you into that fun contest we mentioned at the beginning of the video, which is just the benefit of commenting. So yeah, ultimately, thank you all for being here. We'll be back next week with a Migos review, speaking of the Migos, and we will be talking about culture too, because how could we not? It's the Migos.